All right, you're good. Kevin, if you want to start the
Recording in progress.
meeting.
All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Washoe County Open Space and Regional Parks Commission meeting to order. My apologies for not being able to attend in person. My employer had some staffing difficulties today and I was forced to stay at work on overtime. But we will get through this, and my intention, since we do have chair and co-chair, or I'm sorry, chair and vice chair elections today, is that as soon as we get through that, perhaps our current vice chair is not able to attend today, but perhaps our new vice chair would be able to step in and run the meeting from the actual meeting room. So item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Wait,
Commissioner
we need to take roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Brandon, can we do roll call?
Yeah. Michelangelo Aranda.
Here.
Timothy Dake. Miles Gertler.
Here.
Sean Hill.
Here.
Kevin Joel.
Here.
Neil Jones. Okay, Nicholas Martin Kearney said he would not be here. Mark Newman. Does not look like Mark is on Zoom or here. And Lisa Rohde.
Here.
All right, and Marluz Garcia, our liaison from the BCC.
Here.
All right, we do have 6, so we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Brandon. Commissioner Gertler, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And would Brandon, would you read the Zoom instructions?
Yes, this meeting will be held in the County Commission chambers and via Zoom. To attend this meeting via Zoom, please log into the Zoom webinar using the link found on the agenda. You can also join the meeting by typing zoom.us into your computer browser, clicking Join a Meeting on the Zoom website, and entering this meeting ID, 898-2690-0042. Alternatively, you can join the meeting via telephone only by dialing 1-669-900-9128. Enter the meeting ID, which again is 898-2690-0042, and press pound. For those wishing to provide public comment via Zoom, log into the Zoom webinar using the link on the agenda and utilize the raise hand feature during any public comment period. To provide public comment via telephone only, press *9 to raise hand, and *6 will mute and unmute.
Thank you, Brandon. Item number 4, election of the Open Space and Regional Parks Commission Chair and Vice Chair for a term of June 24th, 2024 through January 22nd, 2025. In the past, our elections have kind of been just seeing random nominations, whether that person may or may not have even accepted the willingness to be in that position. So what I would like to do is to just pull the commission to see first who's interested in being chair and who's interested in being vice chair. And then from that list, we can request nominations from other commissioners to nominate that person for that position. Deputy District Attorney Liddell, does that sound feasible?
Lindsay Liddell, for the record, yes, that is feasible. So anyone who wants to discuss potential nominations for chair or vice chair, feel free.
Okay, thank you for that. So at this time, I would like to just poll the commission if there is anyone who is interested in being the commission chair. And I'll just start by saying I'm willing to continue if that is desired.
This is Commissioner Rhodey. I'd like you to continue, please.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any other interested parties in being the chair? So I guess we can open the chair for nominations or open nominations for the chair.
This is Commissioner Rhodey. I nominate Kevin Joel for the chair.
This is Commissioner Dake. I second that nomination.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on that action?
I have no public comment in chambers, and I see no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of Commissioner Joel continuing as chair signify by saying aye, and I will abstain from this vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Are there any commissioners who are interested in serving as vice chair?
Commissioner Aranda, for the record, it is something that I would like to be considered for.
Commissioner Aranda, thank you. Are there any other commissioners interested in being vice chair?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Dake. I would consider that position.
Thank you, Commissioner Dake. Hearing no others speaking up, do we have a motion to nominate either Commissioner Aranda or Commissioner Dake for vice chair? I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to nominate Commissioner Dake for vice chair.
I'll second. This is Commissioner Rhodey.
Is there any comment or any public comment on the motion?
There's no public comment on the motion.
Thank you. All those in favor of Commissioner Dake being vice chair for the term until January 2025, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And at this time, I'm happy to continue attempting to run the meeting via Zoom, but Vice Chair Dake, are you willing to take over running the meeting since you happen to be in chambers?
Sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, and with that, move on to agenda item 5, public comments.
I do have one public comment. Dave Keys, if you'd like to approach the mic, you have 3 minutes. This will be regarding the soccer stadium.
Yes. It's actually Dave Keyes. I'm a nearby
Excuse me.
resident and use the park. And the fields quite often. Is that better? I just looked at the material in the white binder book there. And it's moved along, I think, from the May meeting that I watched online. So I think we have a good diagram now, which was not available online, that covers quite a few of my points. It looks like wedge access does not show up anymore, and I think that's good. It's overwhelmed now. There's no more parking in that area, and it looks like there will be another ice facility. So that leaves all the access onto Virginia, which I was certainly going to suggest as the main access. That will have some more problems with left turns onto South Virginia, U-turns up by Mount Rose Highway, and also perhaps left turns to enter the stadium. The other alternative is to take South Virginia and go around Summit Mall, and then people can go either north or south on I-580 from there. So I think that's a much better plan. Also, on the plan I saw in the White Book, I felt that the stadium should be down near South Virginia with the parking hopefully located between there and the fields, but it looks like that's been solved. My question there is, it looks more like surface parking than a garage of any sort that I heard on the video of the meeting. I found a 2015 parks plan with all kinds of other facilities, a swimming pool and various things that don't exist anymore. And when I watched that video of the meeting, I was kind of surprised that, number one, there was no scheme, sketch, plan, anything. Certainly for me, who needed more orientation for the problem. And it looks like there is now. I think the stadium is down near Virginia, where certainly the noise and the lights and the traffic belong, rather than up near the apartments and Wedge Parkway. And again, I think it's moved along a lot. I don't think we need a huge amount of detail at this stage, but I did have some concerns after listening to that meeting that I thought this has been rather arbitrarily looked at by FOF as far as what goes where, which fields will be removed, and I feel much better about that now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Brandon, do we have anything else?
I have no further public comment in chambers nor on Zoom.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 6, approval of the draft minutes for our Open Space and Regional Park Commission for our last meeting, May 22nd. I get a motion to approve or any comments on the draft minutes?
This is Commissioner Hill. There was just a little bit of, in some of the references to the foundation name, in some cases it was referred to as For Our Fans Foundation. In other cases it was referred to For Our Friends Foundation. So the only thing I saw in the minutes was, I think we should go through and just clean that up and make sure that there's consistency in reference to that foundation name.
Which item was that, Commissioner Hill?
It was item, let's see here, item 10.
Item 10.
And in several references to the For Our Friends Foundation or the For Our Fans Foundation. There was confusion there. Both names were used.
It should be For Our Fans?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or corrections? Could I get a motion to approve those minutes with the designated changes?
Commissioner Hill, motion to approve.
This is Commissioner Gertler, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Commissioner Dick, I recommend taking public comment for any action item before voting on the item.
Do we have any public comments on the minutes of those meetings?
I have no public comment on the minutes in chambers nor online.
Okay. With no more comments, could I get a vote to approve those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, presentation, discussion, possible recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to approve a non-funded cost share agreement between Washoe County and the United States Department of Agriculture, Forest Service, Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest, with an estimated Washoe County non-cash contribution of $215,510, primarily in salary and labor costs over a 5-year period, to allow Washoe County to maintain existing and future trails that cross both jurisdictions along the Sierra Front, and to continue maintaining the Whites Creek, Thomas Creek Canyon, and Michael D. Thomas trailheads.
Hello, for the record, Christina Thayer, Washoe County Trail Program Coordinator. This is a presentation just for the recommendation for the board to approve a non-funded cost share agreement between Washoe County and the United States Forest Service, Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest. Currently, Washoe County has been maintaining Whites Creek, Thomas Creek Canyon, and the Michael D. Thompson trailheads, as well as the adjacent trails that are cross-jurisdictional between the Forest Service and Washoe County. Our agreement, let's see,
You'll need to turn it on. I think on the side, you'll see where it'll be red. Click it to
Yeah.
green. There you go.
All right, and then, sorry for the,
Should be good.
let's see, there
There
we
you go.
Is that one? Okay. Washoe County and the Forest Service last signed a non-funded cost share agreement for trail and trailhead maintenance in 2002. Since that time, the agreement has never been updated. The original agreement was signed following approval and construction of Whites Creek and the Thomas Creek trailheads, if you're familiar with that area along Timberline Road near our Galena Regional Park. The trails are mostly on Forest Service property, though the trailheads reside and maintained by Washoe County. The Washoe County has constructed additional trails as well as trailheads along United States Forest Service properties since 2002, though the agreement was never updated to actually reflect the work that we have been doing with the Forest Service. That's what we're hoping to change today. Washoe County Parks maintains and services, again, Whites Creek, Thomas Creek, and the Michael D. Thompson trailheads. Many of the trails cross between our lands. We do have additional planned trails as well as trailheads that will share these similar circumstances, needing various types of servicing and maintenance, and we'd like to continue doing that in partnership with the Forest Service. Just as far as previous actions, these are just some agenda items that have been approved in the past. Most recently, in June of 2022, Washoe County Open Space and Regional Parks adopted the Carcion and Canapa Ranch Action or Recreation Action Plan, Access Plan, excuse me. That will also include some proposed trails that will be on Forest Service accessed by Washoe County maintained trailheads, which will need servicing and maintenance. I'm going to skip forward here to the 2022. Everything between 2022 and basically 2022 have been new trails and trailheads that we have already begun implementing or constructed. The last time the board approved the execution of the agreement was in December 10th of 2002. And that was an interlocal challenge cost share agreement that authorized the county to partner with the Forest Service and operate and maintain Whites Creek as well as Thomas Creek trailheads. And again, we've updated and added more trails and trailheads since that time. If approved, this agreement would allow us to provide light maintenance, which includes, again, Whites Creek, as well as Thomas Creek Canyon, Michael D. Thompson trails and trailheads. Our services include garbage, litter management, signage, noxious weed management, as well as restroom maintenance. The trail tread repair and drainage improvements and vegetation management and sign installation would be what would take place on our trails. That's just very light maintenance, nothing heavy, no heavy equipment or machinery without Forest Service involvement and approval through NEPA. Our additional allowances would allow the county to operate volunteer service days and/or training events on United States Forest Service lands, which currently we would need to attain permission. We would be able to proceed with just some light communication. We would continue to manage the day use or closures of our trailheads. It'd provide county staff presence on our trails as well as trailheads. Uphold Recreational Trails Program, or RTP funded grants. As part of those grants, we are responsible for keeping the trails open and available for use and maintained for no less than 20 years under those grant agreements. It would also provide the trail program coordinator, myself, at the time, to represent the interest of the county and provide assistance and coordination between these Forest Service arrangements and projects that we have going. The county would be able to comply with resource protection and practices as identified in requirements in RTP grants as well as future grants that we may be funded. We would be providing consistent maintenance, safety, and sustainable conditions within our county and trails and trailheads. So there'd be some level of consistency cross-jurisdictionally within our parks. We could address the trail maintenance needs on Forest Service lands that create detrimental conditions within our current Washoe County parks and trails. Sometimes a trail might have an issue basically upstream, so to speak, that washes down and into our parks. So it would allow us to address those and provide a better level of service in the parks. And it would allow us to serve as a collaborative partner with the Forest Service, which is a major recreational stakeholder within the county. The relationship lays the foundation for future project requests on Forest Service properties as well. As well, the county has its mission to provide exceptional parks, open space, and recreational opportunities while preserving our natural, historical, and cultural resources. So we would be able to uphold our end of the bargain on that. What are some of the benefits of this agreement? As noted, we could continue to provide exceptional parks, open space, and recreational opportunities while preserving our natural, historical, and cultural resources. It would allow us to implement better resource management as well, practices that are identified in grant funding specifications, such as weed management or watershed protection. Those are some of the things that we identify in our grant applications. So if all goes well, the Board of County Commission would approve this non-funded cost share agreement. We would then take that agreement to the Forest Service and have it signed off on by the district ranger. We would continue to maintain Whites Creek, Thomas Creek, and the Michael D. Thompson Trailhead, as well as the trails connecting through these areas, present and future. And then we could, continue doing light trail maintenance cross-jurisdictionally on the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest. So in summary, just our possible motion should be that should the commission agree with the recommendation of this possible motion, move to recommend the Board of County Commissioners to approve a non-funded cost share agreement between Washoe County and the United States Forest Service, Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest. The cost associated with that is approximately a $215,000 non-cash contribution from the county, which is really just reflected in salaries and labor over the next 5 years. And again, that would just help us maintain our existing and future trails along the Sierra front, including Whites Creek, Thomas Creek Canyon, and Michael D. Thompson trailheads.
Okay, thank you. Just, I guess, to summarize and make sure we're on the right track here, this is really just to formalize the relationship that's evolved with the Forest Service since the formal agreement in 2002.
Correct.
Update it, and kind of
as well as include
reset it.
Yes, include some additional areas that we have added to that partnership since 2002, trailheads as well as trails.
And then the cost of this, the $215,000, is that significantly different than what's going on today?
No.
That's just, again,
That's just to reflect the projection of over the 5 years of labor and salaries.
Okay, thank you.
Within the county.
Do we have any questions from the other commissioners?
This is Commissioner Hill for the record. I'm curious what the Forest Service, this sounds like a really great project. I'm just out of curiosity, what does the Forest Service bring to the trail areas as they cross? Is there anything that they do, any trail maintenance work that they do in these areas, or is this all in the county?
It's often a collaborative effort when they have the ability to address the needs that are really close to these areas, they certainly come in and do what they can. It typically tends to be something more like a bridge is out or major drainage concerns. The Humboldt-Toyabe Forest is fairly large, and I believe at the time of the initial agreement in 2002, they were fairly understaffed and underfunded, and so the county stepped up to help facilitate that process so that we could open these trails and trailheads. So right now, we really work with our park rangers and staff to get whatever we need to do in those areas, but I think if it's something major that would require NEPA, the Forest Service is absolutely going to step up and grab the reins on such a process. But if something were needed, let's say grant funded, we would work together on that and likely apply together.
Thank you.
I've got a question as well. This is Commissioner Gertler for the record. So Christina, in my experience, having an agreement like this in place is critical to getting new projects approved as well. Is that what you're seeing or what you're expecting? Like this would grease the skids to get new projects approved on?
It would
Forest Service?
certainly help.
Yeah.
It would certainly help just lay the foundation for any future trails and trailheads that we need to work with the Forest Service collaboratively on. And it shows a level of commitment from the county as well as some of our regional stakeholders within the Truckee Meadows trails planning process that we have, a number of stakeholders that you're familiar with. These types of agreements are critical for us working together to continue upgrading our level of service and wayfinding and signage. So it does show a level of commitment and partnership.
Thanks.
Commissioner Garcia, for the record, along the same lines, in terms of natural disaster, perhaps, and I can't see the imaginary lines that we're talking about with the jurisdictions, but if a fire were to rip through, for example, would each jurisdiction be responsible for repairing the bathroom signage or anything that kind of was taken out in that
That's a
natural
good question.
disaster?
That's a great question. You know, I'm not sure is the right answer at this moment. I believe the Forest Service would likely help out, especially if it was primarily on their lands. I don't believe we would be held entirely responsible for rebuilding their trails. If it's on Forest Service would absolutely have the helm of this. Our signage and facilities that are on Washoe County properties that we currently maintain, like let's say a restroom, I imagine we'd have to look at that at the time with the Forest Service. So I'm not 100% sure on the case of a disaster.
Do we have any other questions from commissioners?
Chair Dake, this is Commissioner Joel.
Go ahead, Commissioner Joel.
Oh, thank you. I can shed some light on Commissioner Garcia's question. So when there is particularly a fire, but in some cases other natural disasters like the hurricane that hit southern Nevada, I think it was 2 summers ago now, that is one of the times when the Forest Service does get restoration and recovery funds. Most of the remaining time, their funds are fairly limited. But that is one of the instances where they are able to sometimes get additional funding for recovery and rebuilding costs. And then the second, I just need to state that I have been involved in many of these projects some of these connecting trails, the Sierra Front Trail, which has included being a contractor for the county. And although I don't believe that this particular agreement really affects that, I should probably abstain from voting on it to avoid any perception of a conflict.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Joel. Do we have any public comments?
I have no public comments in chambers. I have no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. With that, can we get a motion on this agenda item?
Sure. This is Commissioner Gertler. I would move as it's written here to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to approve a non-funded cost share agreement between Washoe County and the United States Department of Agricultural Forest Service, Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest, with an estimated Washoe County non-cash contribution of $215,510, primarily in salary and labor costs over a 5-year period, to allow Washoe County to maintain existing and future trails that cross both jurisdictions along the Sierra Front and to continue maintaining the Whites Creek, Thomas Creek Canyon, and Michael D. Thompson trailheads.
Can I have a second, please?
Commissioner Hill, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item 8, presentation, discussion, direction, possible recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to approve the ground lease and development agreement for the unsolicited proposal from Wendy W. DeMonte, representing 4 Our Fans Foundation, a Nevada nonprofit corporation, for an outdoor soccer stadium and training facility at Washoe County's South Valleys Regional Park.
Good afternoon. For the record, Aaron Smith, Division Director of Operations, Community Services Department. We have a presentation for you, as well as the proponent and representatives to answer any questions you have. So today before you, there we go, is an unsolicited proposal for your consideration and possible recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners from For Our Fans Foundation for an outdoor soccer stadium and training facility at South Valleys Regional Park. Text on this is pretty small, but the unsolicited proposal process is a mechanism for Washoe County to partner with the private sector for innovative infrastructure and services that would otherwise not be available solely through taxpayer funds. This process includes steps to make sure that the project has a net benefit to the public. We're in the early steps of this process. So before staff spend a lot of time working on the details, we're bringing this item to you asking if the concept of the proposal is worth pursuing. And if so, what agreement conditions and recommendations would you make to the county commissioners? From there, we'll take this to the county commissioners, and if the county commissioners direct staff to move forward, we will negotiate the final terms of the agreements. And once we have a final draft, staff will bring back to the Board of County Commissioners final approval or signatures. This does not skip any of the design, planning, permitting, or public involvement process. There will be lots of opportunities to address issues such as traffic, accessibility, service levels, and park usage. So the proposal in front of you is for the currently undeveloped area of South Valleys Regional Park in Zone 1 in this map. It generally aligns with the park's current master plan for additional flat fields in the area. It has vehicle access planned for South Virginia, a major arterial road. And the proposal would help accelerate the development of this park. In your packet, we've delivered draft ground leases and development agreements, but they're yet to be fully negotiated. The current terms and conditions in those agreements are a 20-year term with one option to renew for another 20 years. Construction must be completed within 3 years. The property will revert back to Washoe County if in the event of a contract breach or expiration, as well as bonding and insurancing to protect Washoe County from financial hardship. We've also incorporated items that we heard from this board on May 22nd, and those items include 50 additional parking spaces on top of what the city of Reno is requiring. Also connecting bike paths to existing infrastructure and providing bike parking at the soccer stadium. Making the soccer stadium available for special events, including State of Nevada high school soccer and other sport championship games. And For Our Fans Foundation is a nonprofit, but because the facility will be operated by a soccer organization that will be for-profit, staff is recommending some sort of form of compensation, rent, revenue sharing, construction of park infrastructure, Our deputy district attorney has advised us to follow NRS 244, which consists of requiring 2 appraisals to determine the fair market value and using that fair market value to advise the nature of the rent and charge for the operation of that facility. So the proponent's representative, Bob Enzenberger, is here to make a brief statement. And then I'll come back and then we can go into questions.
Thank you, Eric.
Bob.
Can I use your space here?
You can, yeah, go.
First of all, Commissioners, I need to apologize for not being able to be at the meeting last month physically, but circumstances just made it very difficult for me to be here in person. Today, we'd like to make a brief statement and then leave as much time as necessary to address your questions and concerns. So as you've heard from Mr. Smith, Washoe County staff is asking you to allow staff to proceed to negotiate the final terms of the lease, most importantly, the amount of rent to be paid by our nonprofit and the Reno USL soccer entity for use of the park property. We would like to reiterate, as was stated last month, that it's always been our goal to make sure that whatever we do with this stadium project, it results in benefiting the community. But admittedly, when we were here last month presenting to the commission, our focus was on pointing out the benefits to the community as a whole, the so-called big picture, and not necessarily the specific benefits to the park itself. We'd like to correct that a little bit. So in response, and appropriately so, this commission, as stewards for the parks and open spaces, made many comments regarding our initial proposal. And these comments were taken to heart. And we believe resulted in Washoe County staff taking a step back regarding its approach to this proposed project, and certainly resulted in For Our Fans Foundation and Reno USL Soccer taking a step back to focus more on the potential benefits to the park to a much greater extent. So regarding this commission's specific concerns that were raised last month, and as Washoe County staff has suggested as new lease terms, you've heard a couple of them mentioned by Aaron Smith. Just to reiterate very quickly, you know, the stadium is to be open to the public for events, that we offer our facilities to youth soccer groups, that we offer the stadium to the NIAA for its state championships when they're up in northern Nevada, that we actively promote and advertise soccer and have soccer-specific merchandise available, that we provide food and beverage services for events, et cetera, these types of things. We are to do this according to the new lease terms at reasonable rates and at no more than actual cost, depending upon the situation. Frankly, all of these items are no-brainers for us. And the reason for it is because these types of things were already contemplated originally in our business model as benefits to the community. You heard Wendy speak of all of these types of activities last month, so we are happy to include them with the lease that's being proposed. There's a few other items that have been mentioned by Mr. Smith. First of all, we are to use our best efforts to use the same engineering firm that was hired by the county. That's Dowell. We can work with that. It creates built-in efficiencies, and we think would be better for the entire community and for the county. Next, to the extent possible, It's being included into the lease that we connect existing bike paths to provide bicycle parking at the stadium. Again, we can work with this. It'll actually assist some of the parking congestion during home soccer games, so we think it's a great idea that's been proposed. The next item is that we design for an additional 50 parking spaces over and above what the City of Reno Municipal Code calls for. The municipal code actually calls for 1 parking space for every 4 seats in a stadium. So we are currently designing a stadium that has 5,500 seats. The math works out to a need for 1,375 parking spaces in the general area. Our initial plan actually calls for 1,424 spaces, which is more than that amount. But frankly, on this issue, we need some guidance from this commission. Although extra parking spaces is a great goal, an additional 5 rows of 10 parking spots along with access lanes will cut into land that otherwise could be used to make it easier to design the added flat fields that everybody seems to want. So when you consider the maximum number of parking spaces won't be used very often because there are only 17 home games scheduled for the soccer team, plus any other events that may use the stadium over the course of a year. We point out that extra spaces may or may not be necessary. Again, we need your input on this issue. So if we can get some consensus today, or at a minimum, the commission's approval to allow Washoe County staff to look seriously into this issue, then we'll know how to move forward with final designs for the stadium project. Now, the final point, rent to be negotiated. This is probably the most important point for parks, and we're on board. Whatever the negotiated amount turns out to be, For Our Fans Foundation and Reno USL Soccer would like to see the money be restricted to parks, initially South Valleys, and not to go to the county's general fund. Preliminary discussions we've had lead us to believe that county staff is on board with this suggestion. But again, your comments would be welcome along those lines. You may be asking yourselves, why does rent need to be negotiated? Well, we still need to leave an avenue for investors who will fund the great majority of this $40 million stadium project to have a reasonable chance to recoup their investment. Otherwise, they may not invest in the project. The financial stability of For Our Fans Foundation and Reno USL Soccer is our goal, and arguably should be the county's goal as well, because financial stability in the stadium project will ensure the long overdue completion of South Valleys Regional Park. Please remember, Washoe County currently lacks funds to build out parks. Other than the ARPA funds, which have been designated to go towards mass grading at the park, and some RCT funds, there are no additional budgeted funds to build out the park. Parks budgets were impacted due to the 2008 recession and still have not returned to pre-2008 levels. This is precisely why the 2019 Washoe County Regional Parks and Open Space Master Plan emphasized a strategy to, quote, balance developing more facilities that would bring in additional revenue with those that do not produce revenue, end quote. The master plan recognized budgeting issues as being problematic with existing staffing levels to maintain and operate facilities. That's why our proposal needs no additional county staff. We are paying to build the facilities. We will be operating the facilities. We will be maintaining the facilities. Plus, parks revenue will increase once our rent is established. All of these additional items to be added to the draft lease, commissioners, are park-specific. And in addition to the big picture benefits to the community that we focused on last month. That's why we wanted to make this additional presentation today. Thank you for your time. Wendy, what would you like to add?
You covered it. Beautiful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. A couple questions come out of that. In reading the material that was presented to us, the rent was $1. Is that just a placeholder in the documents, or was that the intent?
For the record, Aaron Smith. So the way that it's drafted now, and I believe we've updated it since, the original draft had a rent for $1. The updated draft leaves room for opportunity for rent or investments in infrastructure. So it's not negotiated yet. So and it's going to depend on the appraisal of the land or the property. So that's to be determined right now.
Okay, thank you, Director Smith. The other comment I have, and this is Commissioner Dake, there's been a lot of comments on various social media. We have a number of emailed comments, and the focus of those comments is traffic and noise. Traffic, I think, is really focused on Wedge Parkway and access in and out of Wedge Parkway, how it affects the residents that live immediately adjacent to the parkway. If we would move forward with this, is a condition of making the primary access to this via Virginia something that we could impose on this organization?
You could make that recommendation. That would be up to your discretion.
And I understand this is going to go to planning. This is going to go to a whole, several more levels. But we're just the beginning of this process, and Deputy Director or Deputy District Attorney Liddell, correct me if I'm wrong, but our decision really is to say whether or not we want to allow this as the use of that land.
Lindsay Liddell for the record. Yes, that's correct. So depending on how this commission moves forward, whether you recommend or don't recommend to the BCC that staff continue negotiating these agreements, your comments will be brought to the Board of County Commissioners and will be helpful for them as the County Commission directs staff of things to include in the agreement if the BCC wants staff to move forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Dake, this is Commissioner Joel.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was kind of wondering if either Director Smith or if some of the applicants could go over the maps that they included in the packet to just kind of clarify what they're asking for. I mean, the map of the master plan was shown. It makes sense to me. I think that, that was a lengthy public process that came up with that master plan of the additional flat fields and the different softball and baseball fields. And then we have, they're not clearly labeled, but we have these sports field expansion option plans. There's no date on them, but I'm presuming that these are the current ones that we are looking at as an option. And it has, the 5,000-foot stadium. I think that's obviously there, just from the graphic. The text, whatever text is on that is too small to read in the PDF image. And then we have, it looks like these overlaid fields. So I mean, I'm taking this as like, okay, so obviously the soccer and softball can't happen at the same time because they're sharing some of the same turf. I heard the public commenter earlier say that it appears that there is no more access out to Wedge Parkway. I mean, on this map, it sure looks like that road is going to connect to the existing parking lot. There is a small line there, which might be a gate, or it might have just been an extra line in AutoCAD. So I'm just kind of curious if perhaps somebody that is familiar with these proposals can kind of describe what they're looking at in each one of these options and how these things are going to come close to meeting what the public intent was of the master plan to serve the community soccer and softball leagues.
Yes, I can speak to that. Thank you, Chair. The current master plan is currently undergoing a design. So the only current plan includes flat fields, which is the slide that I showed earlier in the Zone 1. Flat fields, a dog park, some small baseball fields, and a multi-purpose area. The documents inside the packet that was delivered are design concepts that were developed by the applicant, the proponents, to give an idea of what that field would look like in this, as well as accounting for parking. So again, they work together with engineers to have a proposal to show what it could look like. Anything else is really in design. We haven't got to the process where we've done a full concept and design and a final process, but as part of this, the applicant would work with the design team that's currently bringing forward the updates to the master plan to figure out where it works best and what that would look like, what the access looks like. There's drainage through that part of the park as well that needs to be considered. So the confusion is probably you're seeing three different views of reality. None of them are final. They're concepts, and then they'll be flushed out through the design process with the master planning, as well as through the permitting and application process. And, so I wish I had a better answer for you, but I hope I answered it.
So are we, I guess, can you just clarify then, because like my understanding from reading was that we're sending this to commission with some recommendations. So we're allowing staff to look at this, but is it going to come back to us? Because I mean, I'd like to be open-minded on, like, well, sure, I'm happy to have staff continue to discuss this, option and see if kind of a mutually beneficial plan can be developed. But like, I'm not seeing enough to say, hey, even with, saying that like, oh, hey, we're going to need a traffic plan and, a few different things. Like, I don't feel ready to send this to commission to make a more final decision. So can you just elaborate on exactly where we are and what we're looking at here?
Yes, so what we're asking for is for you to give direction to the BCC on whether you recommend this in the park, whether you support this in the park, what is needed to make it a benefit to the community, and what would you like incorporated in this deal. The other pieces of the process of making sure that it's in the right place and that it's adequate, we haven't done that work yet because we don't know if this board recommends it to the BCC and whether the BCC approves this for a benefit to the community. So that's what we're asking for, and I think Bob wanted to say something as well.
Thank you. For the record, Bob Enzenberger. Commissioner Joel, the conceptual drawings that you're looking at, some of which are from the original master plan, some of which are from Washoe County currently, and some of which are from our design team. Primarily, the differences are shown on the west end of the park. There has been some interest for baseball fields, and there's certainly interest for flat fields in that area. One design shows 4 baseball fields. If 4 baseball fields end up in that area, there probably will not be enough room for additional flat fields in that area. If 2 baseball fields end up in that area, there certainly would be room for a couple of flat fields in that area. And even if there's 3 baseball fields in that area, there should be enough room for additional flat fields to be designed. But I think the important point right now is that all of these designs are conceptual. And we are not yet at the point where our design team has rolled up their sleeves and gotten together with the county's design team to see if we can come to a finalized design that satisfies this commission and the people. So you may ask yourselves, why hasn't that happened if this is such an important thing to do? The answer is kind of blunt. Neither myself nor Wendy DeMonte can recommend to our investors and donors to expend hundreds of thousands of dollars in engineering until we have a green light to use the property. It's kind of putting the cart before the horse. What we can promise you is we intend to satisfy all interests in this area of the park. The original master plan showed for 3 flat fields. There will certainly be a flat field in the stadium, and we believe there will be additional room for the 2 other flat fields that have been planned. The issue is what will happen with the baseball fields. And again, we believe there should be enough room in that west end of the park to satisfy these interests. Thank you.
Lindsay Liddell, for the record, just to add on to that and clarify, similar to what Bob is saying, from his standpoint, staff doesn't want to or shouldn't spend time and resources on a proposal that ultimately maybe this commission or the BCC doesn't want staff to move forward with negotiating and incurring costs with doing those appraisals, things like that. So that's the current stage that we're at. And if the BCC level approves staff negotiating these agreements, staff would move forward with that and get the appraisals, things like that, and then come back to this commission with a final agreement. And the BCC would also be required to adopt a resolution that is in the best interest under the NRS that Aaron was referring to. It's 244.2815. It's regarding economic development. And it allows a county to either lease or transfer property for less than fair market value when it will result in economic development. So that's the framework that we're looking under. And that's when we're referring to rent. We're talking about establishing what is fair market value for the lease, and then from there, how do we negotiate it? So if this commission has any insight, half of fair market value or 10% of it, or whatever it is, we welcome your comments. If the BCC approves this item, your comments are very important to us as we continue negotiating.
Thank you for that. I just want to respond to Mr. I didn't catch his last name, but Bob's answer there. I've been involved in a lot of recreational planning projects, and design by commissioners is very unusual. Normally there would be like community meetings and like a planning, charrette or multiple exercises to gain input from the community and the stakeholders, the people involved in our current leagues and users of the park and stuff, to collect all these ideas before it would come to the commissioner. Design by commissioners I don't think is good, but I see other hands raised, so I'm going to let them go ahead with their questions before I come back.
I do have 2 hands raised. Commissioner Neil Jones is first, and just for the record, Commissioner Jones did join us on Zoom at 1:35. Go ahead and unmute and go ahead, Neil.
Okay, yes, thank you, Brandon. And I want to apologize to my fellow commissioners and the public. I had a technical issue here. I was present, so I did see and hear the meeting from the beginning. However, on this particular item 8, before we move ahead, there were a couple of deed restrictions on, one was outdoor use and the other was public use. Has any encumbrances or restrictions on the deeds for this project, has those all been cleared up, or is this too premature?
For the record, Aaron Smith, so those deed restrictions will be hurdles. I wouldn't consider them cleared up at this point, but there is a plan going forward to resolve those.
Thank you.
Commissioner Aranda had his hand up next.
Yeah, Commissioner Aranda, for the record, I think the biggest concern still that I haven't really seen clarified or answered is traffic mitigation and noise mitigation. I'm trying to imagine any other area that's that close to residential with major event arenas. And I know that this will suffice with the flat areas or the original master plan, but the original master plan, I didn't think imagined at any time 5,500 people cheering on an amazing Reno team. The proximity to residential does seem concerning, and a lot of the comments that I've seen so far, those are the major ones, is traffic and noise. What is a prospective plan to help mitigate that?
Yes, for the record, Aaron Smith, the access to Virginia seems to be the most ideal option for dealing with traffic getting into neighborhoods using Wedge Parkway. As far as noise, I think we're too early on in the process to address those specific design elements, but you can make recommendations as you like to inform that. So there will be a full permitting, planning, design process where public input will be gathered. This is just the part of the process of conceptually, does this make sense? And the reason that we're not doing the public stakeholder gathering first is because this is a public-private partnership, which allows us to potentially be a partner with an entity. But before we enter into an agreement with them, we want to make sure that it makes sense for us before we spend a lot of time doing it. So that's why we're here today, is to talk about, whether this is something we want to pursue, and what those things are, and then there will be time for voices to be heard, for those design elements to be addressed, and the full design and process that would normally for any build out of a park to go through.
I've got a couple questions, if I may. This is Commissioner Gertler. Well, I really do applaud your vision. I think it could be a really great thing for the community, for sure. But probably the other commissioners have experienced this, but on this commission, we really don't get very many public comments usually, and there are not very many concerned public comments that come in. And I think everyone else has pointed this out. It really comes down to traffic and noise. And I'm not sure there really is a way to mitigate that fully, this close to communities. So I'm curious if you've looked at other properties, whether or not they're, county properties or federal agency properties or private or City of Reno. And then I was also curious if alcohol is going to be served, because I think community members would be pretty concerned about that as well.
Do you guys want to speak?
Thank you, Wendy Damani, for the record. Yes, alcohol is planned to be a part of it, just like it is at other areas in the park already. And as far as looking elsewhere, we literally met with City of Sparks, City of Reno, Washoe County. We've talked to private landowners. There simply isn't land in our area anymore. I mean, you've heard the mayor of Sparks, pretty much jumping up and down saying we need a lands bill because otherwise we're going vertical and we'll turn into, San Francisco in the next 50 years. So they're trying to expand the boundary of their city. I mean, that gives you a pretty good example of how much land is left in this area. There just isn't any. I do want to point out that across the country, people and communities are spending billions of dollars creating infrastructures just like this. People actually want to live near these stadiums. So if I could, right, I would get a huge parcel of land, put the stadium in it, build apartments closer than even what they are on Wedge Parkway. That is what's happening across the country. They're not worried about the noise. They want to be a part of that. They want to be able to live and play within walking and biking distance. So there are tons of examples right now within the USL and outside of the USL where these type of communities are actually going up around our country.
If I could respond, I think that's a great point. This is Commissioner Gertler again for the record. I think that's a great point, but because this wasn't included in the master planning process, we don't really know what the community thinks. So what we're relying on are these quite a few negative comments or concerned comments. And I think, people have valid concerns because they moved into this area without this facility being there or even being proposed or in a master plan, so it's not like they chose to move into this area like maybe young folks would in wherever. Like I went to a Major League Soccer game a few weeks ago in Philadelphia and it was like that.
Yes.
But also I had to wait an hour and a half to get out of the parking lot because of the traffic.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing we read all of those comments on social media as well. Their biggest concern is Wedge Parkway, which of course is our concern. That is why we're so focused on Virginia Street. I mean, to your point, you can include it, not include it, doesn't matter. We're gonna work very hard to make sure that Virginia Street entrance and exit is the way people get in.
One other question, do you know, has the county put forward a proposal for this in the Truckee Meadows lands bill? For land to be turned over to the county for something like this? Because that would be an option.
I'm not aware of that. Aaron, I don't know who you are.
For the record, Aaron Smith, I'm not aware of anything, but I can get that answer to you. But right now, I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
I do have hands raised online with the commissioners who have been waiting to speak. Lisa Rhodey, you're first, and then followed by Neil Jones and Kevin Joel. So Lisa, go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. For the record, this is Commissioner Rhodey. Well, I was the one who brought up the idea of possible revenue sharing. Seems to me that revenue sharing might make better sense than negotiating a rent. Because as you said, there have to be investors and they have to be able to realize some amount of money from their investments. I was wondering how often would there be games that would generate revenue? And in general, for a stadium that size, in a community of this size, what would be the normal ticket take? So those are my first questions. Then I have some more questions after that.
Well, we know that with 1868, Wendy Damani for the record, we know that with the 1868 team, the average attendance was about 3,600. So we would expect that plus a little bit more with average ticket price at $24. Does that answer your question?
Well, to an extent, because then the investors have to realize something. So if we were looking at just a possible revenue sharing agreement, what ballpark percentage would the Washoe County Parks be able to think they might receive?
We'll have to negotiate that. I wouldn't even dream of throwing out a number right now. I mean, I truly just have no idea.
Okay, because part of what's being pitched here is that this could really help the parks in revenue. So having some clue regarding revenue would be very helpful.
Agreed. I just can't do that right now.
Gotcha. The second question I had is, have you ever, in this, for the fans, have they ever built any noise mitigation walls?
For our Fans Foundation has not ever built anything, so it's not in the plan right now. I don't know how that would work. I don't know.
No, in other communities where, say, anything similar to ours, where the stadiums are in the same proximity, are there a lot of noise complaints?
No, people are thrilled to live there. They're actually moving there.
Is that because they can see the games from their windows, or
Sure.
why?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a different lifestyle that people are looking for now.
So what community could you cite that maybe had something like this in the last 5 or 10 years, where people were actually moving there to be a part of that?
I would look at Rhode Island right now. That's a perfect example. I would look at the Star down in Dallas. That's another example on the NFL side. The NHL has an example that they're looking at in Arizona. And I know there's several others within the USL League.
Okay, and here was my last question. There were a number of references to negotiating with staff, talking with staff. What staff are we talking about? Washoe County, Washoe Parks? What staff?
Washoe County.
So the Washoe Parks staff would have input on this?
Yeah, yes. I mean, we've been meeting with Eric Crump and Aaron Smith and Colleen, primarily those three.
Okay, and for the moment, have they let you know how they feel about this? Do they seem in favor?
They keep working with us. they're very generous with their time with us. I will say that. I think they have enjoyed going through this process with us.
Okay. Well, thank you. Those were my questions.
Yeah, thank you.
I yield to the next commissioner.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Dake, just for the record. It's the Operations Director, Aaron Smith, that's put forth the recommendation by the Parks Department to put this in front of this commission to get us to move it along. Am I reading that right? You're for it?
For the record, Aaron Smith, yes. For the record, I have enjoyed working with Wendy and Bob. And the reason that we're supportive of this and want to bring it forward is because we see there being a potential net benefit to the community economically, but also for the opportunity to expand and build out this park before we could otherwise. Like it's been said before, park funding is difficult at times. So it may be decades until we can do something in this area. So this might be an opportunity to provide amenities that work both for the applicant or the proponent of this project, as well as the community as a whole, and having access to amenities in the parks that we wouldn't otherwise or may be delayed. So that's the reason. And on as far as the numbers go, we see a potential opportunity for that being a net benefit, but again, it's the policymakers that are going to make that final call on the value of having this amenity in our parks, potential consequences. So we're bringing this forward because we feel like there's potential opportunity here.
Okay, thank you. Still at
Commissioner Jones is next.
Yes, Commissioner Jones here for the record. Due to the public concern and their comments with traffic, just a quick question. How long do we think construction of this facility is going to last? And, is there going to be dust mitigation and things like that? Because you're going to be moving a lot of dirt. And we want to try to lessen the impact on the folks nearby. So is there any idea of how long the construction will last?
As far as construction access in the development agreement, it does account for that. It does state that they need to account for, where that construction access is, so it doesn't impact the other park goers. a plan and approval. As far as how long construction will last, it sounds like about a year, no?
For our day, much less.
So much less, so the idea is that it's gonna be modular construction, so that it's actually built somewhere else, shipped over, and then put together in pieces, so it's fairly rapid construction once grading and once they go vertical. You wanna add anything to that?
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Joel?
Oh, thank you. So I totally agree with the statement that, that these types of facilities can attract residents. I mean, we've seen that happen around the Aces Stadium, but I believe in most cases, those are in the urban core. And, you're not having, everything's spread out, right? I mean, there's opportunities to go to restaurants and other businesses and parking in a very, immediately spread out area. We're not all in one parking lot with apparently one entrance and exit to South Virginia Street. And I think most of the neighbors, I don't know if necessarily they would agree with that statement that, that people like living next to stadiums, because I think that most of the people in that area probably chose to live there because it was more suburban and not in the urban core. We got, I believe, 8 comments on this item, which is a large amount for a Parks Commission. It's generally, as Miles pointed out, very it just happens, and people don't pay too much attention to things that come before the commission. So to get 8 comments is pretty large for us. And it appeared to me that most of those comments came from people that live in that neighborhood. So my interpretation of that is that maybe this neighborhood is not in support of the stadium. I'm certainly not seeing comments from people that live right there that are saying that they want to see this. In fact, I don't think we really got any comments that said that were very positive about it. I didn't really get my question answered of if that is just an extra line on those maps or if that is shown as a gate. If that road is going to go through to both Wedge or South Virginia. And if it is a gate and we were looking at just an entrance on South Virginia Street, I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night, and 5,000 people through one exit of a facility where the game essentially ends at the same time and they all want to leave. I mean, the Grand Sierra Theater is 3,000 people. So just imagine if you've ever attended an event there, getting out of that parking lot, which has multiple entrances and exits. Just imagine that double with only one. So I would just foresee that is going to be a pretty significant issue. And, it's just, this is a park, this is one of our limited areas where we have space for these flat fields. And I totally understand that we don't have the money to install them. But, once it's gone, it's gone. Once it's turned into a parking lot, it's probably never going to be flat fields for future generations. So that's kind of my concern, is that we still don't really have much to go on. I'm pretty comfortable if it's all we're approving is for staff to continue looking at this. But I guess my question is can staff bill for their time? So the staff time that's involved in looking at this, can that staff time be recuperated by the applicant? I know that's pretty normal for development applications, and I'm just kind of curious if that could apply to this.
Aaron Smith, for the record, I don't know if I can answer that question. I don't know. We can try to find out for you, but I don't think we have an answer for you. I think once it gets to the planning department, and that's standard in the planning world, but as far as bringing this to county commissioners for direction, no, but potentially further down the line.
Sean Hill, for the record, I want to go over the assessment process. I'm seeing in the literature that I have in front of me 3 stages. Feels like we're in stage 1 right now. Since a lot of the comments that we're hearing from the commission revolve around public interest of this, I wanted to go back and ask you, Aaron, if you all move forward with this and you get the approval to do so from this commission, is there, I'm not seeing in these 3 stages of the assessment process a public input component. So if that is a component, can you describe where in the process that would be?
Sure. So this process really allows us to have a final agreement and sign off on what the relationship between the county and the proponent or the would be, finalize those, and then we would essentially be giving them authorization to use this property to develop this land. And then through that process of what they're actually going to build, and is where the traditional process would take over, where we go through permitting and planning and the applications and the stakeholder input and all those things will still be held accountable for that. So that's the piece where the public would be able to voice their support or opposition, or and then also additional approvals and then inspections. But before we do all those things and spend that time, we just want to see if you would give us direction to move forward and negotiate these terms of this agreement so that that later stage can happen.
So to clarify, would that public input happen after the contract is signed or before?
I believe it would be after. Yeah. So we would negotiate the terms of them using the property for the usage that they want to use it for. And any of the specific things that we're requesting of them would be in those agreements. But as far as what City of Reno and planning would require for them to do it would be part of the planning process.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gertler, just to clarify, so does that mean that we would be signing or not we, but the county manager, I guess, would be signing a contract with them, and by the time we got to public participation, it would just essentially be a done deal? So if there were overwhelming public outcry against it, we would still be contractually obligated to lease it to them?
Yeah, so let me step back. So today we're looking at giving the Board of County Commissioners direction and your recommendations on what we should be using our parks for and what conditions those would be. We'll bring this item to the Board of County Commissioners to find out what their recommendation is and what their direction is. And as part of that, there'd be public comment at that point on informing what should be in that final negotiation. We would take that direction, if given approval to proceed, to negotiate the final terms of those agreements, and we would bring that back to the Board of County Commissioners for an additional round of public comment and potential approval and signing of those agreements from the board would, county commissioners would sign those agreements potentially, or, disagree and not sign it, right? So there would be 2 points of public comment for the agreement itself, of the terms of that agreement, before we even get to the planning section of what, like the design and those different things, traffic mitigation and studies and all of that.
So in my mind, public comment is very different from a public planning process, which I guess is what you're saying would happen after the county commission approved it, right? So if the county approves going forward with the lease and we get into public planning where people are, intimately involved with their proposal, what happens then if essentially the community doesn't want it?
Fora fans would have to fulfill the obligation of the permit, or they would have to do what's needed to be done to be able to develop it. If they can't do what needs to be done to actually build on that property, then it's, essentially dead. So the terms of that usage of the land is kind of one piece of it. Whether they get through the process of actually building it to the standards and specs and the requirements of the permitting process is, a third step.
I do have some hands raised on line. Commissioner Brody?
Yes, thank you. This is Commissioner Rohde for the record. I did ask Wendy how many games she thought would occur there per year, and I assume there's a season also. Does anyone have any information regarding that?
The season this is Wendy Damani for the record. The season starts in March and goes through about September, depending on how good we are and how many playoff games we have.
So in a community our size, how many would you anticipate?
Well, I would say there's definitely going to be 17 and up to 20, 21.
And those would be official games. Those wouldn't include like youth soccer and stuff like that.
No, that's correct. Those are just the pro team games.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Aranda?
So listening to Chair Joel, and I agree with a lot with it in terms of people wanting to live near the stadiums or these event venues. Normally it's in urban cores. Normally it's apartments that are near it. And apartments are more of a temporary living situation. If someone didn't like the noise, they could move out. The concern is that this is being in an established suburban neighborhood. This is where people have already bought their houses, are in the middle of their 30-year plus mortgage, and don't have that opportunity as well. And so the concerns that were sent to us are concerning because some of those are the homeowners that live there, which would impact them. And I can't imagine anywhere still in my head where there is an area where it's built near homes. Is there an example of any of the recent construction of the USL's stadiums in a suburban area, similar to an area like South Valley's Regional Park?
For the record, Aaron Smith, I don't think we have an example for you off the top of our head, but I think we can find one.
This is Commissioner Day. Again, Commissioner Aranda, if you reference those sport field expansion options 1, 2, and 3, they have moved this or positioned this stadium very close to an off-ramp off 580. So this is moved, I guess that would be east, kind of as far as they can go. It is adjacent to I believe that's a trailer park and two different apartment complexes. Just my experience, I used to live very close to a high school stadium, and yes, on Friday nights it gets really noisy, but you expect that. Again, these are apartments, transient. They somewhat buffer, I believe, the noise that would emanate up to the Wedge Parkway neighborhood. But yeah, I do understand your concern there, and I have seen the comments from several of the residents up in that neighborhood. Do we have any other comments from the commission?
Just one other question from Commissioner Gertler. So for a long time, there was a sign on North 395 north of McCarran that said future home of Major League Soccer. What was that? Was that you guys?
No.
What was that?
So for my limited knowledge of this is that there was a proposed soccer stadium next to Jan Evans Juvenile Detention Center off of Parr, south of, like right up against the freeway. I believe they got approval to move forward early last year, but as far as the status, I can't speak to that. But that's as little as I know. Do you guys want to add anything? Yeah.
It was never associated with the pro team. So we're associated with the USL bringing professional soccer here.
Any other comments from the commission?
Commissioner Joel.
At the previous meeting, Mrs. Damani mentioned that the FC 1868 failed for other reasons. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, because we have, we've done this before with the joint thing at the Aces Stadium. And I'm just curious. I guess I was not aware of what the reasons were that that soccer minor league soccer team failed to succeed in this community, and if there's information that can be shared with us on what led to that and how this is different.
Wendy Damani for the record. Herb Simon owned 1868. Herb Simon is really good friends with the Papadakis family. The Papadakis family has the USL League. They own the league. So my understanding is that Herb Simon was having a drink with Papadakis and said, "Hey, Herb, buy a team." So Herb said, "Okay, can I put it in a baseball stadium?" And it was agreed that you could back then. So he bought a team from a friend, brought it to the community. The Reno, Sparks, Northern Nevada community really supported it. I mean, I still see 1868 hats out there. And then pretty much, but they kept the same front office as the Aces. They never, really committed extra resources. They just took a front office already in existence and piled on a whole nother team. And then COVID hit, and then Herb Simon, was a couple years older and pretty much, he's extremely wealthy, in the billionaire range. And I think he was cleaning up his portfolio and just said, clean up my portfolio, for stuff that isn't making me a ton of money. And that the team was just an easy thing to let go. So I don't think he necessarily cared greatly for it. I think the community cared greatly for it, as did the front office staff. Eric Edelstein ran that team and absolutely loved it. And he has said in the newspaper that he fully anticipates soccer to come back to our community and be very successful. Does that help?
Do you have attendance numbers? That does help. Although do you have attendance numbers of what FC 1868 had
You bet.
at Aces Stadium?
You bet. It was about 3,400 average attendance.
Was the average?
Yes.
How about the last year before COVID? Because I mean, I know my recollection is it was pretty popular when it came, and then it kind of it seemed to me it was before COVID. It really was dwindling. Like it seemed like there just wasn't more than a few hundred people at these games.
I just have my numbers as 3,400 average attendance for them.
Okay.
Hey, Brandon, do we have any public comments?
Dave, would you like to, it's Kais? Dave Kais would like to speak on this matter. You have 3 minutes, Dave.
And while he's getting ready, the ones that were emailed, do we want to read those, or do they just go in the record?
I've already put them online for public record.
Thank you.
Well, I feel, Dave Kais, one more time, feel much more informed now than when I led off the discussion. My main comment is exactly what I saw to be the problem at the May meeting, is that we have a defined space for the park, and we now have these several options of placing fields. But we're trying to debate whether this FOF field should go there. And I've heard that it's not worth hundreds of thousands of dollars of engineering to figure it out. A soccer field is this big. We're going to put 5,500 fans around it that extends it a little bit. It's not hard to draw that at 1 inch to 300 feet like those other options and shuffle it around on those options. We have nothing that we've seen that says what proportion this field will occupy on those plans. Obviously, the parking could be built in different configurations, multiple floors or all scattered out or all kinds of sizes, but the field is fixed. And I think it would really help the decision to just get that diagram. It can be done in 15 minutes. Slide it around those options and see what is left of the park. Invent whatever we want to for parking or with your guidance. But it seems like all of you are trying to decide on something you have no idea. We can't decide where to put it, how big it is, how noisy it is, where the entrance should be, and we have no idea what size it is, and it's very easy to do on that plan.
Thank you for that comment. We actually do have that. Brandon, can we get that up there?
That would be very useful.
It was in the
That's
staff
my only
report
comment at this
presentation.
point.
You want the staff report up there?
Yeah, this was page, oh gosh.
The light green ones.
Way towards the back of that 57-page staff report.
Oh, this is?
This one?
No.
No.
So
Basically, this,
These ones, Brandon.
it looks like.
Okay, hold on. Which one? Okay, I got it.
thank you.
And to answer your question, thank you for your comments. There is that. It's just the shapes overlaid on top of the site layout.
For the record, Aaron Smith, to give some idea, while we're going to show you something, the stadium that's being proposed is about the size of the two flat
There we go.
fields in South Valley's, perfect. It's about the size of two flat fields that are in existence at South Valley's right now. These are the lower flat fields, which it gets used as a dog park during the off-season. So south of the library, can I plug in at all? Can I show my screen?
Oh, yeah, it'll be south of the library, yeah.
I don't know how to do that, Aaron.
So the plan of the, this isn't it, so the actual pitch and the stand.
To your left is that pointer, so I don't know if that'll help. You have to hold down the button, but it's like a red pointer. Might be able to, and I could turn off the lights.
There we go. Okay. So the pitch and the stands takes about as much, consider it like two of the flat fields that are just south of the South Valley's library that are current. And can we get the overhead? Yeah.
Sure.
This is the actual plan. I don't know which way it shows.
All right. So the South Valley's library is right there. Just to the south of it are two flat fields. The footprint of the stadium is about the same as those two flat fields. So to give you context on size or how much this takes up in space. Yeah, I've got a.
I can also put that one, I have it on here, I can put it up there for you if you'd like. So there's the same wood.
Yeah. No, that's not it.
There were three options. Could we get just a summary of it looks to me like the soccer pitch is the same location in all three options. It's just a matter of what's used, how that remnant is used beyond that. It's
Right.
just a big flat field and it can be used in a multi-purpose sort of thing.
Right.
Is that correct?
Again, conceptual.
Yep.
You know, what this could conceptually look like, how much space does it take up? That was the idea behind those site plans. And then what's left over. I think Brandon's,
Okay.
I'm just trying to enlarge this a little for you.
okay.
Brandon, I think what I'd like to see is the conceptual drawings.
So
This was the master plan, and the conceptual drawings are.
There you go.
There you go.
Is that representative, I may be out of order here, but does that represent what we're talking about?
Yes, exactly. In fact, the proponents are the ones who came out of pocket to, show this and work with their design team to, and our pavement engineer to figure out what this could look like and put together some ideas of how to conceptualize this. How much space does this take up in this park with parking, and then what's remaining, what else could be in there? So that is to scale, if that's what you're asking.
So, Aaron, if this were to move forward, and granted this is conceptual, the Parks Department, Park Management team would be involved in fine-tuning this site layout, where parking's gonna be, the exact location of the soccer pitch, that type of thing, get into those details?
Yes, absolutely. So in parks, one, we want to be good neighbors, right? So we want to make sure that, noise and traffic and all those things are accounted for, as well as our park users of the other amenities in our park, as well as the long-term sustainability and the long-term value of these things. So our parks planners will be heavily involved in, working with what this looks like, how it creates the most value, because what we want is to create the most long-term value for the community as a whole, and then planning for those things.
Okay. And I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this other, this multi-use area that shows the baseball fields and overlaying some soccer fields, would the soccer club be developing that, or is that for Washoe County to do in the future?
So there's been a couple iterations of the draft agreements, but that could be a potential piece of the agreement. So there was a draft, but right now, because we don't know what the compensation might be, or what rent or reimbursement or infrastructure we don't know what that value is to negotiate that piece, but that is on the table as an option of not taking rent or revenue sharing, but having requirements like, within a year of being profitable, building out one of the flat fields and then being specific on what that looks like. Or, lots of different options, whether it's, making it available that in the future we could do a vertical parking garage, or, a baseball stadium, or whatever that looks like. Those are all negotiating things that we would negotiate, but we're not there yet in the process.
Understood.
But again, your recommendations and what you guys would like to see in that park are very important to the process of informing how that ends up.
And then this facility would have restrooms, concessions, other amenities to it, not just grandstands in a field. Would restrooms be available to the public during non-gaming times?
Do you want to speak to that?
So funny, Wendy Damani, we discussed that during our last meeting with county staff, and we're trying to work through that. That actually, we think, would be a fantastic opportunity for the community to have nice, clean restrooms. Again, it's so preliminary, but we have already discussed that as being an option.
All right, thank you.
I do want to let you know, I can't remember who asked about development in suburban areas, but I did text Justin Papadakis. He runs the USL League. And I said, are there any other examples within the league of people building in suburban areas? He said, yes, Rhode Island, Loudoun, Antelope Valley, Orange County, New Mexico. A city that we all are very familiar with that I cannot announce because they haven't announced their team yet, but another one, Jacksonville, Roswell, Charleston, and others. So this is happening in areas just like South Reno.
Thank you.
I have another question. This is Commissioner Gertler. Who would own this?
For the record, Aaron Smith, Washoe County would own it. We would be leasing it or we'd have a ground lease development agreement. So essentially Washoe County would own it and my understanding right. Bob could maybe be able to speak better to it better than I can.
Bob Ensenberger for the record. Washoe County will always own the land. That will never change. The current lease lists For Our Fans Foundation as the quote owner of the stadium, but it's a distinction without a difference. Whether you call For Our Fans Foundation the owner of the stadium or the lessee of the stadium, at the end of the lease, the stadium reverts back to the county.
Okay.
So again, there may be various tax reasons why one thing is set over the other. It was actually the county that recommended in the first iteration of the lease that the nonprofit become the quote owner of the stadium. But again, that's just the building, it's not the land.
For the record, Aaron Smith, one thing to add there is, so capital improvements, maintenance, and stuff like that would be the responsibility of the For Our Fans Foundation.
Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia, for the record. And as a non-voting member, I just kind of wanted to chime in on the big picture. And what we see as county commissioners is we'll all be packaged together, all of your comments and questions, public comments and questions. It'll come before us, but ultimately, my colleagues and I want to know, do you feel that this is a good use of parkland? And does it appeal to this body that we have or engage in a public-private partnership where this will be paid, operated, and maintained by an operator? And ultimately, is this something you feel comfortable with? We will listen to all of that. But there are many phases and steps along the way to answer questions, to dial in more details. And your questions are great because these are the questions that we will hear in our chambers when we hear this agenda item, if it is approved by this body. So I just kind of wanted to, there is some heartburn around this, I get it. I'm the one that usually gets all the public comment, so I can relate to that. And I just want to let you know, I just want to be able to come to my colleagues and say, this is how the Parks Commission felt about this, and whether or not you are comfortable. I'm not going to weigh in either way.
Thank you, Commissioner.
This is Commissioner Hill. If I can make a comment, I just, for myself, am doing sort of a plus and minus list. We were asking a lot of great questions. This is complicated. I'm going to list out some of the positives as I see them and some of the negatives, and maybe that'll help us think through how we want to move forward. The first positive I want to point out is that the county staff is making this recommendation to our body, and I think we should look at that closely and take that seriously, because I've come to develop a lot of trust for our county staff. The second positive is that this, and one big reason I think why county staff is recommending it is because it would bring dollars to the development of this property, which is in the master plan, and those dollars are not currently anywhere else. So, so that there's another benefit there. There would be an economic benefit to the parks, to the Parks Department, based on the rental use agreement or profit share or whatever that is. And then, of course, there could be a social and recreational benefit to the community. I know our friends over here, Wendy and Bob, have more benefits, but those are the benefits that I've laid out here. Some of the negatives I'm hearing, Commissioner Joel in particular is concerned about the loss of our flat field area. And by my count, we're losing at least 2 flat fields just from the stadium itself, but I think that there's actually more collateral loss of flat field space when you include the parking lots. So that's the first one. And the second one is the negative public comment that we've received from those in the closest neighborhood. So I think it's going to come down to whether or not we want to move this forward, again, based on my little list here of the pros and cons that I've laid out. So just want to, hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Do we have any other comments?
Yes, Commissioner Joel.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I've been trying to find ways to want to vote yes for this, and I just, it seems like several of the questions that I've asked haven't been answered. If there's opportunity for those answers to be located and provided, that would certainly help. But it really comes down to, I mean, I'm, kind of familiar with how these processes work. And if all we're voting on is that, hey, we'll direct staff to continue negotiating, design options and ideas to see if a feasible design can be done at this location, I would support that. I'd sure like to see staff recover some of their staff time investment in that. But my fear is that, if we vote on this kind of as it seems to have been proposed, that we're directing staff to, hey, continue negotiating, and then it's going to go to county commission and start the development process. And I have a feeling that somewhere along that lines, there will be an outcry of public comment from the softball and the youth soccer leagues about the loss of potential future fields to parking lots and this, what essentially is a for-profit stadium. I mean, I realize it's a nonprofit, but I mean, this is a business venture. You mentioned investors, and they are going to expect a return on their investment, presumably. That they're going to lose out to that. And when it gets to that point, it will be said that, like, well, the Parks Commission was okay with that. And I'm like, I'm not okay with that. Like, I'm okay with staff continuing to discuss it, but I'd sure like to see, some of our questions get answered and to see a more final conceptual design after some community meetings are held, come back to us to determine, like, hey, we solved, we're throwing a parking garage underneath the field, the stadium field. So we're going to be able to continue with some of the youth flat fields and not cut into that area as much. We're going to work with NDOT to figure out how to put a on-ramp, directly from the park up to southbound 580. Just some of these things that I think, could potentially solve some of these issues, but it just doesn't sound like they've even been explored yet. And I understand engineering costs and, how expensive that is, but, it doesn't cost a lot of money to, reserve the room at the library and throw out a public meeting and just kind of record, people's ideas and inputs on some maps and easels, and then start to go from there. So that's just kind of where I'm at, is I just don't want to see this come down the road and be like, well, yeah, it's a shame to lose these flat fields, but we're not looking at that anymore. It already went to the Parks Commission and they were okay with it. Because I want to make it clear that I'm not.
This is Commissioner Gertler. I don't have the exact same concerns as Kevin. I mean, I'm not as concerned about the loss of flat fields because over time there's an option for much more development than the county could probably ever afford. But I am concerned about the community around it for all the reasons that we've talked about. And I don't know if this is possible, but, I'd be willing to, for lack of a better term, kind of pass the buck onto the commission with a requirement that there is some kind of more robust public engagement before it goes to the commission, so that the community is fully aware, they have a better understanding of what the options might be and what the process is planned to look like. Because like I mentioned before, in my mind, there's just a big difference between a public planning process and public comment at a commission meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Gertler.
Yeah.
Comment really quickly on that. Wendy Damani, and just to let you know, this has been a very long process for us as well, well over a year. And we have met with GBYSL, Lacrosse, High Sierra Lacrosse, Washoe Little League. All of them are on board.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't going to be shocking to them. They sat in a room and we discussed it for well over an hour. Lots of support. And then prior to that, another open forum meeting with EDON, RSCVA, the University of Nevada, City of Sparks, City of Reno, Washoe County was there as well. Who else? I mean, the room was full. GoEd was there. So the state, tons of support. In fact, not one negative. So there has been engagement, not down to the resident level, which is what you're referring to, but that's just because what would I do in front of a bunch of residents? Hey, I have this idea. You know what I mean? It needs to be a little more meat on that bone before we can really even go to investors seriously. But we have included as much of the community as was reasonable up to this point.
This is Commissioner Rhodey. So you're saying the investors are not actually in place at this time?
For the record, Aaron Smith, I believe my understanding is that those investors don't have land to use yet. They don't have anything to say yes to. So this process is going through the negotiations of just using this land that is in a public park for this purpose, negotiating those details to get so that the investors can bring their money in.
So the investors are lined up then?
Wendy Dabani, yes, I have, again, a room full of investors that are interested in this project.
Are most of them from outside of this community?
No, actually, all of them are from within the community, which is my goal. I will go outside the community if I have to. The goal would be to do it with local investors.
I like that idea.
Thank you, I do too.
Any more comments?
I did have, can we put a requirement on passing it to the commission, a requirement that there's more public engagement with the community around it rather than with all the agencies she mentioned?
Lindsay Liddell for the record. So the way that the item is drafted, I mean, it's kind of a gray area as to whether you could require that. And the item itself is drafted a little bit different than the staff report suggested motion, which is just to recommend that staff continue negotiating. And so it sounds like what you would want to do is you're recommending to the board that staff continue negotiating, and that for our fans would have some kind of public meeting with the neighbors. And is that prior to the BCC?
Well, I guess I don't understand the approval process that well, but that's kind of what I was imagining. But if there's some way, I guess what I'm getting at is, this is a minor hurdle, right? But every hurdle that it goes over, a project is harder to stop. They build momentum, there's investors on board. And, all of that list of all those agencies are on board. So if you're a person living in that community, it's harder to slow things down the further down the road it gets, right? So I'm thinking the earlier the better to have engagement with the community that's more than talking to agencies and clubs and that sort of thing.
So just from a legal advice standpoint, it's a little bit of a gray area. So if there's an action taken that it does not comply with open meeting law, the action's void. So that's kind of the flip side of what you're looking at. It's really vague. I would stick to the confines of that with, and not include that in the item today, but have that be included with what goes to the BCC. With that being said, that even though there's not a board action or a commission action, that Wendy and Bob are hearing you and perhaps can do things differently based on your comments.
I guess I'm just imagining if you could work with the community better, maybe there's a solution that the people that live directly adjacent to this and this facility would have an outsized impact on, could be okay with. And maybe it could be what you're talking about, Wendy, and people could become excited about it, but that's not where people are right now, it seems like, at least the people directly adjacent to it. So I don't know the timing of that. When would be best to do it, but you know, if Commissioner Garcia thinks that it could go to the commission, and then that is the proper place for that to happen, I'm comfortable passing it on to to the commission.
Aaron Smith for the record. Lindsay, could they phrase it in a motion with the contingency, with their conditions in that motion? So approve or not based on these conditions that, traffic's mitigated or those sorts of things. Is that kind of something they could do? Or is that?
It's a little bit of gray area, but I
Okay,
think that
that's the
would
same.
work. Lindsay Liddell for the record. I think you could do something like recommend that staff continue negotiating and include in those negotiations XYZ, which includes public meetings with the neighbors and traffic mitigation, whatever.
That makes sense. Yeah,
A motion.
okay.
Or you could recommend to the board or to the, recommend to the board that they not allow staff to continue negotiating. That's another option. So you could approve as is. You could recommend that staff continue negotiations with these other things involved. And if you don't have the votes to proceed with any of those options, I think staff, regardless, will take the item to the BCC, and what occurred at this meeting will be presented to the BCC. In other words, if there weren't enough votes to support, that would be presented to the BCC, and that information would be provided to them, as well as if there aren't enough votes, if there's a motion to not support and that motion is not successful, that information would be provided to the BCC as well.
I have a couple hands raised for the commissioners online. So I go ahead, Michelangelo.
Commissioner Aranda, for the record, I think the hardest part for me to still just get on board is that the community wasn't really involved or informed. I appreciate the agencies that were involved. They are looking out for the best interest of the region economically, and that is amazing. I mean, I can't imagine a good economic benefit of this, but the people who are going to be directly impacted in terms of what's going around them were not really engaged, and that hurts me. It's my district. I live there. I live right down it from it, and so I'm at that park all the time. And so I think the important part was to have found a way to engage them. I like what Commissioner Gertler said, it's free to rent a room at the library just to inform the community. But I don't think anyone knew about this at all. And I think they would have had a chance to get excited or not excited. But I think without knowing, other than the public comment that we have received, it's hard to imagine anyone being excited for it other than the agencies that benefit the economy. So, and I'm still just trying to wrap my head around that. Sorry, I was trying to think of a question, and that was more of a comment than a question.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes, Commissioner Jones for the record. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have the minutes in front of me, but I believe we already approved to move to phase 2. If Brandon, if you could check the minutes, I thought we already approved that and in the approved minutes. And if we want to amend the motion or make some type of continuance to more public input for that, but I believe we already approved moving to phase 2. Correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Dake. I don't believe we approved anything other than we did request additional information be presented. There was a time element with for our fans foundation. They didn't think it was appropriate that they wait for another 2 months before we met again. and we agreed that we would have a special meeting to address this in a more timely manner, which puts us here today. But I don't believe we made any approvals at our last meeting.
Well, I believe if you check the minutes, Commissioner Aranda made a motion and it was seconded. If I'm not correct, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that motion was seconded and approved to move to phase 2.
Neil, can you reference where that is in the meeting minutes, please?
Yeah.
I would like to, but I don't have my minutes in front of me. I'm online here, so
It doesn't
I
look
do
like there
not
was a
have those
vote.
minutes.
Number 10.
Yeah. Where is that?
These are out of order.
This is Commissioner Rhodey. I only recall a motion to have a special meeting to get more information as well. I don't recall any vote to move to phase 2. I don't even know what phase 2 is.
This is Commissioner Hill. I think the intent was that we wanted staff to be able to continue work on the process, but come back to us with more information. But by the letter of the vote, it does appear that we approved beginning stage 2.
Thank you.
What is stage 2? This is Commissioner Rhodey.
For the record, Aaron Smith, stage 2 is the process so we would bring this to county commissioners with your recommendations for their approval to move to final negotiations, negotiating the land lease and the development agreement with the proponent. Again, conditioned upon meeting the permitting and the process, the planning process. So stage 2 would be the final negotiations before we expended all the effort of going back and forth to seeing whether or not this is a net benefit to the community.
So you're still looking for
Yeah, Commissioner.
a motion to send it to the county commission?
Commissioner Jones is correct. That's the way it's written in the minutes.
I think we can still relay your recommendations. I just don't know if it would be a motion now, right?
Oh, yeah.
We need a motion.
The way that the agenda is set up today allows you to take action, so if you have a motion, you can proceed with that.
Commissioner Aranda, for the record, I just want to, you're correct, Commissioner Jones. The last meeting, the motion that I had restructured was to direct staff to continue and not stop or halt the process, because there was a time contingency with this, and that's why we also have the special meeting. But it wasn't necessarily intended to be an all-encompassing approval to go the next steps. That's why we're having this one, I believe, is to now gain the extra information we were missing and then decide whether this was a viable option for us to move forward with.
So do we have a motion?
Commissioner
Mr.
Joel has his
Chair.
hand raised.
Thank you. Commissioner Joel, for the record. So I don't feel that all of our questions that, that we asked at our prior meeting, to kind of like, hey, continue working with the applicant and come up with some more details on exactly what we're looking at here. I just don't feel that those have been answered at all, or not answered sufficiently in some cases to justify, in my mind, a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. And I totally understand the applicant's desired timeline, but I'm also thinking, I try to think more than 2 or 4 year time frames that often happens in government. you know, we should be expecting this stadium to be around for 40 or 50 years as an asset to the community. And if it ends up being a few months behind during the planning process of where they want it to be, that's just part of, I think, the price that's paid to make sure that we end up with a positive product, and it's not rushed through. So I'm willing to make a motion. I'm totally fine if it's not seconded, but my motion would be to have staff continue to work on this with the applicant with some recommendations. And those recommendations would be, one, my recommendation would be that there be some cost recovery in that. Two would be that at least one public meeting occur at the South Valleys Library so that it can be easily accessed by the neighbors of the park and easy for them to provide their comments. And three, that the results of the continued work with staff and this public meeting and any continued design finalizations that are worked out, then come back to the Parks Commission where we can look at this final plan and decide if it is a fair trade-off for you know, what was intended to be a park. And so that would be the conditions that I would put on my suggested motion.
Well, is that your motion? Commissioner Joel?
Yes, and I can
we
try
have
to
enough clarity
pare
there?
that down if needed.
This is Commissioner Rhodey.
Lindsay, did we have enough detail there to consider that a motion?
Lindsay Liddell, for the record, I think what's missing is whether there is direction or not at the BCC level. And I didn't hear that, so it sounds like that Commissioner Joel's motion does not include a recommendation that it go to the BCC to
Okay,
approve
thank you.
negotiations.
Commissioner Joel, can you rephrase that as a motion, please?
One moment before you do.
Okay.
For that public meeting at the library, there needs to be adequate notice.
Of course.
To the residents so they can attend.
Commissioner Aranda, and advertisement and, you know, announcements.
This is Recording Secretary Rowe. Just to let you know, we do have a regularly scheduled Parks Commission meeting July 24th, which is basically a month from now. So I don't know how that fits with Mr. Monte's schedule or everybody else's. So that way we don't have to do a special meeting. We could actually probably even get it onto the BCC for August. Just throwing that out there, just so you're aware of timeframes. Everybody's aware.
Brandon, I'm sorry, I believe, is it July or August?
July 24th
Okay.
is our
Thank you.
regularly scheduled Parks meeting, the next one. So it gives us basically a month to get that, because it sounds like you want basically to come back to us before they go to BCC again. I think that's what you said, but I'll let you rephrase.
Yeah, so I'll rephrase my motion and try to shorten it. And actually, before I rephrase the motion, I guess my comment would be, I totally believe that if it's told to us that there's support from all the youth soccer and softball fields, but it would have been very easy to get a letter from them to include in the packet. That would obviously would have made it a lot easier for us to see that support is there. Because I mean, just because someone attended a meeting, it doesn't always necessarily mean that you know, that their support is there. But to rephrase my motion would be that our recommendation is that staff continue to work with the applicant on the final details and negotiations. And our three recommendations of things that the commission would like to see are a public meeting is held. The final product come back to the Parks Commission. And I apologize, I forgot what, I think it was the first or second of my original motion. Does anyone recall what one of the things that I mentioned was?
Lindsay Liddell, for the record.
Final conceptual drawing.
I don't think that was it.
Yeah, to have that final plan come back to the commission.
This is Lindsay Liddell.
it was
Commissioner
the cost
Joel, what I
recovery.
wrote down is that
Cost, yes.
you wanted cost recovery, a public meeting at South Valley's library that would include notice and advertisement for that meeting, and that the results of that work meeting be provided to the commission, and that any letters of support from entities such as the softball or Little League be also provided.
You said that better than I could. Is that an acceptable reading back of the proposed motion?
Can I ask for some clarity? So you're recommending to the board these things, right?
My motion does not currently include any recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. If we get
The next step in the process is to negotiate these final agreements. We're definitely, bringing these items for update informations to this board, obviously. But you can I think we can build in an additional recommendation item for maybe the September meeting for you to take a look at the final draft of that agreement and make recommendations for the board on what you suggest they approve for that final agreement is kind of what I might suggest.
Yeah, Aaron, what I'm hearing though and sensing from, without taking a vote, is that we're still not a whole lot better off than we were when we met on the 22nd. We still have concerns. Our job is what's best for the public out there? Is it this area of land that can be a park in the future and play baseball and play soccer and whatever, or to take a big chunk of it out of the middle and turn it into a commercial soccer pitch with a whole bunch of parking and all the other supporting infrastructure. And, just to put this at a very high level for what I'm hearing anyway is there's still a lot of hesitancy there because we don't really know what we're going to get here, and we don't really know exactly what we're going to lose here, and we haven't gone out to the local neighborhoods to say, hey, what do you think? Because it's called a regional park, but there's a huge neighborhood right there that uses this park every day. So we need to look out for that group's interest as well as the whole of Washoe County. We're not comfortable yet, is what I'm hearing. I'm not comfortable
Absolutely,
yet.
and I appreciate that. So right now, you're voting on whether or not you agree with the concept of this to explore it. There are a lot of checks and balances along the process, but you're not approving the final.
But not by us. There's not a further step by the Parks, Open Space and Parks Commission to say, no, that's not what we agreed to. We've got a very fundamental drawing here that shows this layout, like 15, 20 minutes of engineering time on an AutoCAD to do this layout. There hasn't been much addressed with the locals, and I appreciate Commissioner Joel's comments that if For Our Fans Foundation met with various agencies and clubs and other entities, we need some letters of endorsement. Some letters of endorsement will go a long way.
Yeah, understood, very good. But, so I may have not said it well enough. I'm thinking that my suggestion was that you put that in as part of the motion, that we bring so we bring that negotiation, the more final draft to you for review and to get your recommendations for the county commission in stage 2. As well as it sounds like we want to do a public outreach to help inform that negotiation on what that looks like. So the other option, I think, is not voting at all, correct?
That's correct. And I think as the motion is phrased, Aaron, your staff report to the BCC would just indicate the nature of that motion and that, that the Parks Commission was unable to include in their motion a recommendation at this stage.
Right. While including your concerns, right? And then also bringing this back to the board for review and recommendation for future steps.
Mr. Smith, when you say bring this back to the board, bring this back to the Board of County Commissioners or bring this back to the Parks Commission?
Parks Commission.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Jones, for the record. If I remember correctly, last month, there was a little bit of confusion on the motion or motions, plural. I remember that there was a little confusion, but the minutes as approved today was to move to phase 2. And that's already been approved, so that's in effect. It also appears that there needs to be, as Commissioner Joel pointed out, and Commissioner Dake, that we need some more public input, basically some more information to buttress our decision to move forward. I think it would help a great deal to move forward with some more information to support whether we're going to move ahead to phase 3. And to put that into some kind of an amended motion or to somehow dovetail that onto the motion that's already been approved, to simply get more public support, if there is public support, letters of recommendation, simply to show more support, I think is what we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. So we had some format of a motion there. Is it, wonder if we could get that restated and clarified so we can vote on it?
Lindsay Liddell for the record. So procedurally, you do have a motion on the record, and to vote on it, you would need a second. And it sounds like as the vice chair running the meeting, you are asking Commissioner Joel to restate his motion for the record.
That's correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Joel, can you restate your motion, please?
I will try my best, and I did write it down, so
Thank you.
I can remember it on the spot this time. So my motion would be that we approve staff to continue negotiations with the project proponent with the following 3 recommendations. One is to look into cost recovery of staff time. 2 is at least 1 public meeting be held with noticing of residents in the area of this project. And 3, that the whatever future design ideas are created and or contract negotiations, that will then come back to Parks Commission for review and or approval with recommendations to the BCC.
This is Commissioner Rohde. Did you want the letters of endorsement?
I don't think that necessarily needs to be in the motion. I think that's just a suggestion that hopefully the proponent will pursue.
We have a motion. We have a second.
This is Commissioner Rhodey, I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Rhodey. We have a vote. All those in favor of continuing work on this effort and meeting those requirements of public meetings, addressing cost recovery, and coming back to the Park and Open Space and Park Commission to review. If you're in favor, say aye.
One moment, please. I'm going to do a roll call vote, just
Okay.
because there's so many people on Zoom.
Thank you.
So I'll go ahead and start with, just say yea or nay, yes or no.
One second. I believe Deputy District Attorney Liddell, there needs to be public comment on the motion before the vote.
Or discussion.
There was already public comment called for the item, so we should be good on that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
All right. Michelangelo Aranda,
Nay.
Timothy Day,
Aye.
Miles Gertler,
Aye.
Sean Hill,
Aye.
Kevin Joel,
Aye.
Neil Jones,
Aye.
Lisa Rhodey.
Aye.
All right, that was 6-1 in favor of aye, so the ayes have it.
Motion carries. Meeting agenda, item 9. Request for future agenda items. Do we have future agenda items? Hearing none. Item, there's something there? Nope, okay. Item 10, public comments. Do we have any additional public comments?
I have no further public comments in chambers nor on Zoom.
With no more public comments or comments from the Washoe Open Space and Parks Commission, this meeting's adjourned.